Welcome to Wheelock's Latin Chapter 15. In this chapter, we're going to be looking at primarily numbers. Specifically, we'll be looking at Latin cardinal numbers and ordinal numbers. And then we'll also be looking at how Latin uses the genitive, specifically in the genitive of the whole. And we'll be looking at a couple of new uses of the ablative case, specifically the ablative with cardinal numbers, ablative of time when, and ablative of time within which. So let's look at numbers first. In Latin, there are two kinds of numbers. There are cardinal numbers. This comes from cardo, cardinis, which means hinge in Latin. And these are the pivotal numbers used for counting, 1, 2, 3, etc. The second category of numbers are called ordinal numbers. This is from the Latin word ordo, ordinis, meaning rank or order. And these numbers are used for indicating the order of things, like first and second or third. You get the idea. So let's look at our cardinal numbers first. Now, most cardinal numbers are indeclinable. The form that you have in the glossary, the lexical form, will be the same for whether it's describing a masculine, feminine, or neuter noun, regardless of whether it's singular, plural, or no matter what case it is in. There are a few exceptions to these rules. Here are a few of them here. The numbers 1, 2, 3, and 1,000 are numbers that will be declined. And then any number that is basically a multiple of 100, not starting with 100, that one does not count, but 200, 300, 400, etc. Those all will decline. And most of these here will decline like first and second declension adjectives. There will be some variation here, and so let's look at these. First one we have is one. Unus, una, unum. You need to know that both 1 and 2, duo, dui, duo, do decline basically like first and second declension adjectives. The number 3 and 1,000 will decline essentially like a third declension I stem noun. And we'll look at those here in just a minute. You also should know that unus, una, unum, is only singular. It only has a singular form. That's because you can't have a plural one. And by the extension, you can only have plural of 2 and 3. You will not have singular forms of 2 and 3. So let's look at unus, una, unum a little bit more closely. Now, if you remember from chapter 9, I believe, we had a list of what we called special ius adjectives. We called them the naughty 9. The Latin language has 9 special adjectives that follow the pattern of the ius in the genitive and the I in dative, singular, just like the pattern that we had for demonstrative pronouns like ille, illa, allud, and este, esta, stood. And we memorized these forms of these special 9 adjectives with the acrostic unus nauta, each of these letters standing for one of these 9 adjectives. So unus, the one we're interested right now, actually is the first of these. Unus, una, unum. You can see it right there. Unus, una, unum, and it means one. Now, here is how this word declines. Again, only a singular form. It's unus, una, unum, which, again, it's just like the pattern for us, a, first and second declension. But in the genitive, you've got your stem, un, along with the ius genitive ending that is similar to the pattern, like I said, of ille, illa, allud, and este, esta, stood. So you have unius, 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 and the dative, it's an I. So uni, uni, uni. Now the rest of these forms will comport with first and second declension adjective forms. And in the accusative, and o in the ablative. And reminder, there is only a singular form. So again, back to our chart with all of our numbers here. Masculine, feminine, neuter, unus, una, unum for the number 1. For 2, we've got duo, dui, duo. The form is a little different than what you might expect. You don't normally see an O in a masculine nominative ending, nor do you see it in the nominative singular for neuter. You do see the AE in the feminine nominative plural. These should be plural forms, not singular. Duo is nominative plural, and duo is neuter plural. You do have the aurum, aurum that you would normally expect in the genitive plural. You have the obus. It's not ibus, but it's obus. You do need to note the difference here. Obus, abus, and obus, masculine, feminine, neuter. However, you do see the accusative normal endings for first and second declension, os, as, and again, the neuter rule, whatever is in the nominative needs to be in the accusative, so you have duo here. And again, the ablative plural, do obus, do abus, do obus. So that is the numbers 1 and 2. Now the number 3 is again only the plural form, and it follows the pattern of third declension I stem. If you'll remember, those endings were s, eum, ibus, s, ibus. This is again plural form, s, eum, ibus, s, ibus. And masculine and feminine are identical forms. Neuter, however, are very similar to the masculine and feminine with a few differences. We have the ia in nominative plural. Eum, ibus, ia, again, neuter rule, whatever's in the nominative needs to be in the accusative, and then ibus. So ia, eum, ibus, ia. That gives us tres, tria, trium, trium, trebus, tribus, tres, tria, tribus, tribus. That's the number 3. Now, the number 1,000, mille, is a little complex. Let's see if we can't break this down a little bit here. First thing you need to know is the word mille is an adjective. M-I-L-L-E. Notice there are 2 L's here. And it's the same form for nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative singular. All of these are M-I-L-L-E. And the translation here is thousand, thousand. Now this is slightly different than the plural form. The plural form only has 1 L, M-I-L-I-A. And again, this form follows the pattern of a third declension I stem. But in the plural, it is actually a noun and translates to the word thousands. So in the singular, it's an adjective, mille, 2 L's. And in the plural, milia, 1 L, it's a noun, and it translates to thousands. And the form, again, the third declension I stem neuter plural endings are ia, eum, ibus, ia, ibus. That gives us milia, milium, milibus, milia, milibus. So those are our cardinal numbers that decline. Every other cardinal number will be non-declinable. Let's look at a chart that kind of gives you all of these forms. We've got the Arabic number, that's the numbers we're used to using in English, 1, 2, 3, etc. through 20. We've got the Roman numerals. If you haven't learned Roman numerals, this might be a good time to work on them. We're not going to go over them in this particular lesson, but it wouldn't hurt for you to work on those. And then here we have the cardinal numbers, unus, una, unum, duo, dua, duo, tres, tria. And then from this point forward, they are non-declinable. And if you have any knowledge of Spanish, you should recognize these because the Spanish language comes directly from our Latin. So quator for 4, quinque for 5, sex for 6, septem for 7, octo for 8, novem for 9, decem for 10. Now the numbers from 11 to 17, essentially you take the number 1, 2, 3, etc. and add it to 10, and that gives you 11, 12, 13, etc. So undecim, duodecim, tredecim, quatordecim, quindecim, seddecim, septendecim. Now when you get to 18 and 19, it goes backwards. It actually deducts numbers from the number 20. You can see the number 20 is wigenti. So 18 is duo de wigenti, 2 from 20. Duo, 2, de from, the preposition, from 20. Wigente, 2 from 20. That gives you 18. And thus 19 is un de wigenti. 1 from 20 is 19. So those are the cardinal numbers 1 through 20. Now, let's talk about ordinal numbers. Ordinal numbers, as we said before, are declinable just like first and second declension adjectives. They're pretty easy to see. First place would be primus aum, second would be secundus aum, third tertius aum, quartus aum, etc. You can see all these forms all the way through 20th place. So these are our ordinal numbers. Now, we're going to look at a couple of concepts, grammar concepts, that some people find a little bit challenging. We're going to see if we can't work our way through them here. The first one is called genitive of the whole, or sometimes it's called partitive genitive. Let's look at these. Now, remember, when we've talked about uses of the genitive, we've primarily said that genitive shows possession. You need to understand at this point, as we're developing our understanding of Latin grammar, that genitive actually has multiple uses. The most frequent is possessive. But now we're going to begin to add to our understanding, our Latin repertoire, and we're going to see firstly here that another use of the genitive is the genitive of the whole, or the partitive genitive. Let's look at a definition of these. The genitive of the whole, or the partitive genitive, is the use of a genitive that indicates the whole of something after a word designating a part of that whole. Wow, that seemed a little tricky, doesn't it? Let me give you just a quick example. If I were to say, I ate a piece of pie, the word pie is the whole word, and piece is the part or the portion word. A piece of pie. All right, so this is essentially what we're talking about. We use this phrases like this in English all the time. In Latin, that word pie, a piece of pie, would be in the genitive, and the word piece would be describing a portion of that whole pie, a piece of pie. So here's a couple of phrases, or words, I should say, that you might get familiar with. Satis temporis. Literally, it says enough, satis temporis, of time. Temporis is the genitive singular of tempus. So enough of time. A better translation, however, to smooth it out, would be enough time. It just sounds weird in English to say enough of time. Nihil clamoris. Nihil means none or nothing, and clamoris means of the shouting. None of the shouting, or a better, smoother translation, no shouting. Pars civitatis. Pars is part. That word is a portion kind of a word. Civitatis, the genitive of civitas, state. So a part of the state. Pars civitatis. And then we can also use this form with numbers like quinque milia virorum. Quinque is 5. Milia is thousands. Remember, that's the plural form here. 5,000 of the men, virorum. Now, that just sounds weird. So we're going to smooth it out to 5,000 men. And then lastly, here we can see primus omnium, first of all. So these are all forms of what we call the genitive of the whole, or the partitive genitive. Now let's look at a couple more phrases here. Pars urbis, part of the city. The genitive of the whole is urbis. The word that indicates a part of the word is pars, and urbis is the word indicating the whole. So urbis is the genitive of the whole. It's the whole word, right? It's the whole thing being referenced. Urbis, part of the city. Here's another example. Nemo amicorum meorum, no one of my friends. So nemo is the word indicating a portion. Which of the friends? Is it all the friends? It's a portion of them. You could have had a number here, 5 of my friends, but in this case, it's like 0, none, no one of my friends. Amicorum is the word indicating the whole. Here's all of my friends, amicus, but it's, again, got to be genitive, so it's amicorum, plural. None of my friends, no one of my friends. Again, if you were to smooth that out, none of my friends, it might be better. So the amicorum is the genitive of the whole. Now, there are other ways that Romans would use this same kind of structure or form, but use a little bit different kind of construct. It's called the ablative with cardinal numbers. It'll essentially accomplish the same thing. The ablatives with the cardinal numbers, or it could also be an ablative with the word quidam or pauci. So the ablative with cardinal numbers is the use of an ablative preceded by the preposition ex or de, that's very important, and a cardinal number. If you have those three things together, a cardinal number, the preposition ex or de, and then that's all being followed by an ablative, then you have an ablative with cardinal numbers. Now, you could also, by the same token, instead of a number, have the word quidam or pauci, which also will indicate a portion of the idea of the whole. All right, so let's look at a couple of forms here. Tres ex amicis meis, 3 of my friends. Now, literally, you've got a cardinal number 3, tres. You've got the preposition ex, and amicis is in the ablative. It's the word indicating the whole. Again, you've got all of the friends. Is it all the friends? No, it's a portion of them. It's 3 of them. Now, normally the preposition ex would be translated from. 3 from my friends. But here, because you understand it's showing a portion of something, you would translate it as of. Even though this is not a genitive, you would translate the ex amicis as of my friends, 3 of my friends. So here you have an example of an ablative with cardinal number tres. Let's look at another example here. Quinque ex eis, 5 of them. Again, the cardinal number quinque, 5. The word that's indicating the whole, eis, here's all of them. That's the them, that's the whole, and it's preceded by the preposition ex. Okay, so here we have 5 from them, or 5 of them. This is another example of a cardinal number, ablative, a cardinal number. Now, here's one more example with the word 100, quintum. Quintum ex viris equals 100 of them, 100 from them. But again, you recognize this as an ablative with cardinal number, so you translate it 100 of the men. All right, now, you may not always have a cardinal number. You may have the word quidam, which means a certain one. So quidam ex eis, a certain one of them. So quidam is the portion word. It's not all of the friends. It's a certain one of eis, them. That's the whole. So here, and again, preceded by the preposition ex. This is the ablative with quidam. Same construct as the ablative with cardinal numbers. All right. 2 more uses of the ablative that are new for us. And again, I encourage you, as I have in class, to make a list, have an ongoing list of uses of different cases. We've added to our list of genitive uses with the genitive of the whole, or partitive genitive. We added a couple of chapters ago, to our uses of the ablative with the ablative of means, the ablative of accompaniment, and the ablative of manner. Today, we've added the ablative of cardinal numbers, but we're also adding ablative of time when and ablative of time within which. Let's look at the definition of these. They're very similar. The ablative of time when, or the ablative of time within which, is the use of the ablative of a word which by its very nature indicates time. Without a preposition, this is important, it will not have a preposition. It will indicate a time when something occurred or within which the action has occurred. Now, what you've got to do, because there's no preposition, you've got to provide one, like at or on or in or within. And context will tell you which is the best word to use. Let's look at a couple of examples. Eo tempore non poteram id facere. Eo tempore is an ablative of time when phrase. Eo tempore. So you've got eo is that. It's the dative, ablative, ablative singular of is, ia, id. And here we're translating it that. Tempore is the ablative singular of time, tempus. And you have to add the preposition at in front of it here in the English translation. At that time, non poteram, I was not able, facere, to do it, id. So, eo tempore non poteram id facere, at that time I was not able to do it. And it's telling us, eo tempore is telling us, when did this action happen? Or in this case, didn't happen, because we got that non there. It happened at that time, eo tempore. Let's look at an example of an ablative of time within which. So this one's slightly different. This is telling us a time frame within which an action occurred. Not just a specific time, but a time frame within which. Secundo anno rex urbem cepit. So secundo anno is ablative singular. Secundo anno, in the second year. We have to provide the preposition in here because we don't have one. In the second year, rex cepit urbem, the king captured the city. So again, secundo anno is an ablative of time within which, because it's telling us the time frame. When did the king capture the city? He did it within the second year. It's within this time period. It didn't happen at a specific time. It happened within the time frame of the second year. So that's an example of the use of the ablative of time within which. Let's look at 2 more examples. Agricolae bonis annis valabant. Agricolae, the farmers, nominative plural. That's our subject. Valabant, they were doing well. They flourished. When did they flourish? Bonis annis, in the good years. Ablative plural here, no preposition. This is a time word, annis, meaning year. It's in the ablative. No preposition tells us it's an ablative of time when or an ablative of time within which. And we can kind of narrow it down by the context and determine it's an ablative of time when. When did it happen? In the good years. The farmer flourished in the good years. One more example here. Octo diebus agricola agris aravit. Octo diebus is our ablative of time within which. Within 8 days. Octo diebus. Again, an ablative phrase here. Ablative octo diebus is ablative plural. Within 8 days, the farmer agricola aravit agris plowed his fields. This is an ablative of time within which. So these are 2 more uses of the ablative. You should write this down in your list. You should write down the definition as well as how to recognize them and how to translate them. Write an example of each of these. This will be helpful for you as you continue your studies. Don't forget to study your vocabulary. We will have a quiz later this week.